Give him praise this morning. What a mighty God we serve.
Hey!
He's everywhere in this earth. There's nothing that escapes his vision. There's nothing going on in your life that he's not aware of. It says in the word, before they call, I will answer. While they're yet speaking, I'll hear. He's way ahead. He's way ahead. And there's nowhere in this world where you can go that he can't find you or see you, because he's everywhere. That's our God. There's no one like him. And there's nothing else like him. I just feel right now to get into the Word, so I'm going to do that. The title of this message that the Lord gave me for this morning was The God of Everywhere. And you just think of how he inhabits this earth. I had a friend, he lives in Atlanta now, but he used to say, just kind of in a joking way, he'd say, well, wherever we are, wherever we go, here we are. And it seems like wherever you go in this earth, here we are, you and God. He's always with you. And really, saints of God go everywhere in this world. We're not bound by anything. We're not limited as to where we can go or what we can do, except by what God says in his word. And in Deuteronomy, and Moses was speaking this to the children of Israel, he said, arise and take your journey before the people, that they may go in and possess the land that I swear unto their fathers to give them. Now this journey, he said, you're going to go somewhere you haven't been before. But rise up now and get ready to go. And now Israel. Now you see, God gives a command. And he's saying, let's rise up now. We're going to go out. We're going to possess what God has for you. But Israel, he says, what does the Lord thy God require of thee? And you say, what? Thought this was a free ride. It's not a free ride. Our God is looking for a people like this earth has never seen. I mean, a people that love him with all their heart, a people whose focus is set, that can't be distracted by the things that are going on in this earth, because like Mindy was talking about the wave. You remember when Peter was walking on the water. He was walking on water as long as he was looking at Jesus. The minute he took his eyes off of him, down he went. And you know, the thing is, when he fell, he didn't reach for the boat. He reached for Jesus. Where was Jesus standing? He was on the water, the same water he'd been walking on. Think about that. He knew where his help came from, and he knew why he was able to walk on that water for the few steps that he took. So it says, what does the Lord thy God require of thee but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I command thee this day for your good. And he was letting them know, guys, this is going to work if you keep your eyes on Jesus. If you keep your eyes on the Lord, the God that's calling you now, this is going to work. But he said, don't let your eyes be drawn away. Don't be distracted. There's millions of distractions in this world. This world is full of distractions. And it's not going to get any better in the days ahead. There's going to be things that you read in Matthew 24 and 25 when Jesus talks about what the end time is going to be like in this world. in the generation that we're living in. He says it's just going to be wars, rumors of wars, calamities. You're going to hear about crises everywhere. And a lot of it's going to be manufactured by the enemy for one reason and one reason alone, and that's to distract the people of God from who they are and what their purpose is in this earth. So this here, what I just read you, was before the children went out to go in the land of Israel. Now switch to the prophet Micah. This is much later on in terms of Israel. And there's a lot of trouble that was in the kingdoms in that day, and a lot of sin and a lot of things going on that were not right. And God raised up Micah to speak to it. And near the end, well, actually this is just chapter 6, but he says, again, I'm going to echo what you just heard in Deuteronomy. He said, He has showed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee? So he, again, puts out the question. He says, but to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God. That's it. Keeping his commandments, as he said in Deuteronomy. But he says the next verse, the Lord's voice cries into the city. So he says, there's a sound going out into the city of God, into the people of God. It's continual. God is always speaking to his people. Are we always listening? Are we seeking to hear what he's speaking? Do we want to know? Some people don't want to know. They say, hey, I've been through enough in life. I don't need another wilderness. I don't need another rabbit hole to climb down. I'm good where I am. But that doesn't stop his voice. His voice still cries out because he's looking for that hearing ear and that seeing eye. He's going to keep looking for it. And when he finds it, there's going to be, it's like a fountain opened wide into your life. It's going to keep pouring in, and it's going to keep calling you into places you're unfamiliar with and things that are new to you, because he's going to stretch you as far as you're willing to go. It's up to you. That's why he says, what does the Lord require of you? What is he looking for? So about this voice now, you think, you would say, well, who's going to listen? But listen to what he says. The man of wisdom will see your name. God cries into the city, and the man of wisdom sees the name of the Lord in what he's hearing. He sees something. His eye is seeing. When you hear a sound, the first thing you think about is like, what was that? It isn't like, you're thinking, I got to open my ears a little more. But God says, a man of wisdom will see the Lord's name in what he's hearing. And he'll understand. So see, it's a combination of things. And it says, hear ye the rod, and who hath appointed it? And so his word is calling to his church right now. And it's going to keep calling. And God is showing things to us, and he's going to keep showing them to us. And when you go into God's word, if you're going to the word because it's something you're familiar with and you just like to read it and reassure yourself, that's okay. But I kind of like it more when you dive in, like, what is really here, Lord? What is there here that I have not seen as yet? Where is there you're calling me to go that I am not familiar with? And that's what he's looking for right now. It says in Proverbs, the hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord hath made even both of them. And this is a word to man that, God made the ear that hears and the eye that sees. But what does that mean? All of us are born, and we can see when our eyes start opening up. Even a newborn baby, you can tell when their eye opens up because they start smiling back at you. Now they see you. They recognize you. And then, and some babies are born being familiar with your voice because they've been hearing it while they were in the womb, and so they know what you sound like, and so they react to the sound of your voice. So all of us are born able to see and to hear, but he's talking about something else here that he's made, and that is an eye that sees the things of God in what's around him. And he's not distracted from them and pulled away from them by the things around him, but he looks through it. It's like having fog lights built into your brain. The world is walking in a fog, and there's commotion and there's confusion, and yet you somehow look right through it, and you can see into the things of God, and you can see that God is getting ready to move in the earth, and you can see what God's calling his people to do, and especially what he's calling you to do, and you are not taken up by all the things around you, because your eyes are single. They're fixed on something. And so it says the Lord made that. He made that seeing eye. He made that hearing ear that's able to tune in to one frequency. And that's the frequency that's coming from heaven. And it's there. This room right now is probably filled with millions of radio waves we can't even see. That's just the way the world is today. Everywhere you're walking, there's some form of radiation around you that's just filling the air. Sorry about that. I turn that off. And it just fills the air around you. And yet, in the middle of all that, there's a sound from heaven that's in that same mix. And God said, I made the hearing ear so you could pick it out and hear it. That the confusion of what was around you would not distract you. And it's so important in the time we're living in to be able to see and to hear. God gave us both. And I'm going to talk a lot about the eye. The seeing eye. Because the Word talks a lot about it. And it talks about it in relation to us and how we're made. It says in 2 Chronicles 16, verse 9, it says, the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong in the behalf of those whose heart is perfect toward him. So what's God's desire? What does he want to do in the earth? He's looking for a people that he can use to show himself through them. He wants to reveal himself to this earth through a people. So his eyes are running. It says they're running. That means he's not sitting. We know God's seated on the throne, right? We know that he's seated and Jesus is at his right hand. We know that. But yet his eyes, those eyes that see everything, those eyes that know everything, those eyes that can look right through you and see right to the core of what you're thinking and what you're made of and what's going on in your life, those eyes are everywhere. And they're looking. He's looking for some place where he can dwell, where he can inhabit that person. He says in Isaiah 66, heaven's my throne, the earth is my footstool, but where is the place of my rest? Where's the house you build unto me? He said, heaven and earth, my hand made all that. He said, where is the place of my rest? And he's saying something about that because he made us too. But one thing he didn't make was that he didn't make us want him to dwell in him. He won't force that on anybody. But he's saying, where's the place of my rest? And then he describes it. But to this will I look, even to him who is of a broken and a contrite spirit that trembles at my word. He says, that's my resting place. That's where I dwell. And see, what are you a resting place for? What are you a habitation for right now in this earth? Think about that. When you get up in the morning, what's the first kind of thoughts that go through your mind? Are you glad the sun rose, and are you glad that you rose? And is there an excitement? Because it's like, what's he going to do today? What is he going to show me today? What am I going to see today that I didn't see yesterday? What's going to change in my life before these 24 hours are over? And you got to realize that's the nature of God. He never got tired of that. when he put Adam in the garden, that was one busy boy for a long time with all the things that God wanted him to do and to accomplish and to name everything and to organize everything in the earth. I mean, Adam was busy. And as long as Adam kept coming back to see what was next from the Lord, he did well. When the day came that he got distracted, his wife got distracted, she distracted him, he allowed it to happen, and then all of a sudden they were kind of like, I don't know if I want to see the Lord right now, and so they hid themselves. But how do you do that? How could he think he could do that? That shows you right away he went from one nature to another in just the same day there. Just all of a sudden, all the fellowship, all the communion, that he had with God, it was just gone. And that's why here comes the Lord, the voice of the Lord, it says, walking through the garden in the cool of the day. He says, Adam, where are you? He knew exactly where he was, but he says, what has happened to you? And it wasn't because he didn't know, but he wanted Adam to know something happened here. And judgment was passed. There was no escaping it. So he's looking to show himself strong. It's just his nature. But he wants a place where he can abide. When it says, I think, I don't remember who it was, whether it was Brian or Mindy, but they commented on how when the Spirit of God came down on Jesus, it abode. It just says that. It abode on him. And we read that and we go on, but stop and think. It stayed with him. Didn't just come and go. A lot of the prophets of old, the Spirit would come upon them and they'd prophesy and they'd do things and then the Spirit would go away. But when the Son of God, when the pattern came to earth, the one born of a woman, born in a fleshly body, born without any of the advantages that he'd had as the eternal Word of God. He left it all. He made himself of no reputation. It was like he was nobody. He was anonymous. Who is this guy? That's what people said about him. Who is this guy? He was the son of the carpenter. Who is this guy? He left all that. He came down here, made himself of no reputation, to be a pattern to show us what could happen to a man who was redeemed by the sacrifice he was going to make. He wanted to show us the power of man exercising his free will through the Spirit of God. He wanted to show us that. And so he did. So here we go in Zechariah. This is quite a leap, but you'll see why in a minute. Here he says, Zechariah says, the Lord said unto me, what do you see? Isn't that great? Wouldn't you love to wake up in the morning and you open your eyes and God, you hear his voice, what do you see? It's going to be like that in these days ahead. The vision of many is blind. It's like a fog. They don't know which end is up anymore. Truth is a lie, lie is the truth. Right is wrong, wrong is right. I mean, it's against nature. And yet God says to Zechariah, what do you see? Be listening for those words as you go through your day. Because he's keeping you close to him. He's keeping you in the Spirit of God. He's keeping you on a path that he's put you on. And so he'll come and say, what do you see? Sometimes he might say, where are you going? There's a lot of things he might say to you. You won't hear him if you're not listening. And I said, I have looked and I see a candlestick, a lampstand, all of gold. And there's a bowl on top of it and 7 lamps on the bowl. And 2 olive trees by it, one on the right side of the bowl and one on the left side. So I answered and spoke to the angel that talked with me, what are these? What am I seeing here? I see it, but what is it? And this is the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel, saying, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. And so God was showing him a lampstand with a bowl full of oil and 7 lamps lit from the oil in that bowl, and 2 olive trees on either side, and the oil was coming from the olive trees into the bowl, which was feeding the lamps, which were lit with fire. And he says, it's not by might, it's not by power, it's the Spirit. It's an olive tree that's feeding into this bowl, that's lighting these lamps that are burning. Now, it's important to understand what those burning lamps represent. In the next verse, he says, for who has despised the day of small things? And this is something God is speaking to us right now. Some people think it's hard to live in anonymity. They think, boy, the whole world should know what's going on here. The whole world should know what I know. The whole world should hear what I'm hearing. But you walk through the streets on a given day, and if you just walk down the sidewalk, people kind of look at you like any other person. They wouldn't notice anything particular about you. And for much of your Christian life, it almost seems like you dwell in anonymity, but there comes a time when what you've heard from God, what He's spoken to you, what He's called you to do, whatever purpose He's given you in life, you may go through a period of time where it seems like, what is going on? It just seems like I'm like everybody else in this earth. I just walk through this earth. I don't look any different, and yet there comes a point, like it came to David, when his mom says, here, take some food to your brothers out on the battlefield. And okay, Mom, and he goes, and what happens? He ends up killing a giant and moving into the king's house. All in a day. Before that, nobody knew who David was. After that, everybody knew who he was. So it's not by might, it's not by power, it's by my Spirit. And who has despised the day of small things? Don't despise it. Don't look down on it. Don't think you're missing it because nothing's happening right now or not what you think should be happening. Don't let that kind of thought get into your head. Because for they shall rejoice and see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel with those 7. Now again, he's talking about those 7 lamps. He says those 7 lamps, they are the eyes of the Lord which run to and fro throughout the whole earth. Just like we heard about in that other verse. The eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth so that He can show Himself strong in the people, in those that the ones that He's looking for. The ones whose heart is perfect toward Him. And He says here, those eyes, those 7 lamps, those are the eyes. And then answered I, and I said unto him, what are these 2 olive trees on the right side of the candlestick and on the left side thereof? And he said, these are the 2 anointed ones that will stand by the Lord out of this whole earth. 2 anointed ones. And they'll stand for the Lord. And they're standing right by that lampstand, holding up that bowl, where those lamps are being lit with fire from oil, which is coming from those 2 olive trees. There's a lot of things I've heard about who they might be, but I know this. They're anointed people of God. That's what feeds the fire of God in this day we're living in. But it gives the light to those lamps. In other words, when those lamps are lit up, you can take a lamp into a dark place and it is not dark anymore. Why? Because you just came in. You brought light. There's no darkness where you go. Wherever you go, here we are, you and God. You bring the light in, just the way it is. So from there we're going to jump. That's the end of the Old Testament. Let's go to the end of the New Testament. And I turned to see the voice that spoke with me. So here's John hearing a voice and seeing something. And being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks. Actually, lamps is what he saw. But he saw each one on its own stand. So 7 lampstands with a lamp. And I saw 7 golden lampstands, and one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. So in the middle of these 7 lampstands, there's Jesus Christ, standing in the midst. So he says, the mystery of the 7 stars which you saw in my right hand and the 7 golden candlesticks. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches. And the 7 candlesticks, remember, the lampstands that held the lamps, are the 7 churches. So what are the eyes of the Lord running to and fro throughout the earth, that he might show himself strong on the behalf of those whose heart is perfect toward him? Who are they? Look around you. It's his church. And he's wanting to light up his church. God is looking for a fire in his church. Because when the church is lit up, then those fiery eyes of the Lord are now walking this earth in human form, just like they did when the Son of Man was on this earth. You light up the church, you light up the world. The church hides in darkness under a bushel, the world's in darkness. There's no light apart from a church that's willing to go places that they're not familiar with and let God take them there. So the next verse is the 2nd chapter, and it says, unto the angel of the church of Ephesus write, these things. Now here's how Jesus identifies himself. These things saith he that holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. That's how he identifies himself. So you remember that bowl? It was on a stand, and those 2 trees were feeding the oil into that bowl on the stand. You say, I thought God could do whatever he wanted to do. Yeah, he could. He spoke and the worlds were created. He would speak judgment, it would happen. But for his will to be fulfilled in this earth, it takes a people who are willing to be around that guy standing in the midst of those golden candlesticks, and we have to be willing to pour out of what he's poured into us. What do they say? That the greatest joy of the teacher is when the student excels him, goes beyond him. What do you think makes God rejoice more than anything else is when he sees his people full of the Spirit, ready to pour out what's in them, and it feeds the fire. And the one standing in the midst of those 7 golden candlesticks, he described him there because it was Jesus in all his glory. It was a sight that was so fearful to John that when he first saw him, he fell dead. Jesus had to raise him up because he had seen the Lord before. Remember, he had walked with him for 3.5 years. He was familiar with this guy. He knew what he looked like. At least he thought he did. But when he saw him in glory, it was too much. But now he was seeing that here was Jesus in the midst of the 7 churches. And those churches were now in a pair. If you go back to the image in Zechariah where the bowl was, those 2 olive trees that were feeding the oil into the bowl, God's anointed ones in this earth who see and who hear and know when to speak and know when to share what they've seen. They feed the oil into that bowl that lights those lamps, that lights that fire, that sends those eyes out into the earth. And God now has, it's almost like they say, in the military they say, we got eyes on the ground in this place now. They'll be talking about a battlefield. Say, I got eyes, because there's got someone there who's seeing what's going on. And now God is looking in the earth and thinking, I got eyes, I got people, I got someone who's seeing this earth, and they are seeing through it. They are seeing into the supernatural realm, and they're ready to move for me right now. And that's how Jesus walked for 3.5 years on this earth. He spent 30 years getting ready for it. For 3 years. So think about that 10-to-1 ratio there that went into that for that time that he actually ministered on this earth. But what was accomplished by that? And he says, as he is, so are we in this world. There's power in those words. When you get a picture of what he accomplished on this earth, and as he is, so are we in this world. So anywhere you go in this world, his eyes are running to and fro. We should be looking for the eyes of the Lord because we are his eyes. And we should be looking. This is something I talked about the last time I spoke here. I talked about the joyful sound. How that not everybody can hear it. It says in the word, blessed are the people that know the joyful sound. They'll walk, O Lord, in the light of your countenance. And that joyful sound is the sound of someone who's made a connection with God. And when you hear that, it can happen in your own life. But when it happens in someone else's life and you can hear it, now you're connecting what's in you with what's in them. And God begins to move through that. There's a power in one. There's one man led Israel out of Egypt. One man came and preached to Hezekiah and turned back Sennacherib. That was Isaiah. And God's had his one here and there throughout history. But now he's looking for what he didn't have through that history, and that was David and Jonathan working together too. Because he says that when two come together, he talks about a marriage, it calls it a threefold cord, because now there's more strength in the two working together than if you just took the sum of each one independently and added it together. Now you're going into this earth and you realize that, yes, I've got the Spirit of God in me. He's got eyes on the ground. What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I doing? What am I saying? Is that what people see when they see you? That's what they should see. But they're not going to see it until you do. It says in Proverbs, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. It's true. He's got a church, and he wants to light up his church. But there is a process to lighting it up. Zechariah described it. John described it. Those lamps, they needed to be lit. There needed to be oil. The oil needed to flow into the pipes, up to the lamps. They needed to be set on fire. And it says, the king that sitteth in throne of judgment scattereth away all evil with his eyes. Proverbs 20, verse 8. With his eyes. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. You are the temple of the Holy Ghost, and when you talk to God, you are inquiring in the temple. And he says, this one thing have I desired of the Lord, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life and inquire in his temple, that I would be a temple of the Holy Ghost, and that I would desire for this temple to be filled with the power and the light and the anointing from his Spirit. For in time of trouble he'll hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle he'll hide me. He'll set me on a rock. He will protect us. He says in Psalm 91, he that dwelleth in that secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. There's something to that. One thing have I desired, and I will seek after it, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and inquire in his temple. I want people to see that in my life. I want to behold the beauty of the Lord and inquire in his temple, so that when I go out in this earth, he's got eyes on the ground, and he's got a willing heart that's ready to move when he says go. And this is what I was talking about before, that time of anonymity. It's been for a long time in his church. And the American church has kind of been lulled into a sleep, where they can kind of be a Christian and it doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't really affect their life. It doesn't change much around them. And God is done with that kind of Christianity. There's a price to pay, but there is a reward to possess. And it's for those that will inquire within this temple, that will just press with everything they've got to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of their life, that they might have that right to behold the beauty of the Lord and inquire of him. So in Matthew 6, Jesus said, the light of the body is the eye. I'll tell you something, if someone's preaching to you, and they're looking at the ceiling, or the floor, or the walls over there, and they can't look you in the eye, I would find someone that would. Because they don't believe what they're saying. If you look at someone in the eye and telling him whatever it is you're telling him, if you look him in the eye, either you're a good liar or you believe what you're saying. In fact, if you've ever been in a courtroom and watched an attorney, they may look all over the place, but when they're talking to the jury, they look them right in the eye. They address them personally because they know those are the guys that got to believe what they're saying. If you can't look people in the eye, there's something wrong inside of you, because that eye, your eyes are the light of your body. They're a window into what's inside of you. There's that old gospel song that says, friend, how would you feel if your heart was made with a window on each side? Well, here they are. There's the windows right here. And God can see right through those windows, right into your heart. And in this earth, people will be able to see you the same way. So it says if your eye is single, in other words, if you don't let yourself get distracted, if you don't let yourself get drawn away, your whole body's going to be full of light. But if your eye is evil, then your body's going to be full of darkness. And he says, if the light, your eye, that's in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? It just blots out everything God would try and do and try and speak. And that seeing eye and that hearing ear are snuffed. They can't operate. Go to Proverbs 20 again. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the body, of the belly, it says. Spirit of man. It doesn't say the Spirit of God. It says Spirit of man. And see, your eyes are the window into your spirit. And it says it's the way, it calls it the candle. Get back to that lamp. It's the candle of the Lord. It's how He sees what's going on in your heart. It's how do you measure growth? How do you measure the temple of God? Now, you remember we talked about Zerubbabel and the plumb line? And it said, don't despise the day of small things. You know, when you're plumbing a wall, if it's off by 1/8 of an inch, you want to correct that. Because when the first wall's out, then the next wall that joins it has to be twisted out of shape to line up with the crooked wall you just set. And as you go through the building, before you know it, none of your doors close, none of your windows work, and all your appliances slide around, and anything you lay on a counter rolls. Nothing's right. Because some little thing was ignored at the beginning of the process. I speak from experience. And so those small things matter. And that plumb line is able to measure the slight, that's the one thing that's so great about gravity. Things fall straight down. put a line on them, and that line will be stretched absolutely straight, absolutely plumb. They have these laser levels now. They're great. You plug them in, you set them on a tripod, and they give you a perfect vertical line and a perfect horizontal line. But what makes them work is that light that you're looking at is on a little pendulum that's straight through gravity. It hangs from a pivot point straight. So the line that's going out from it is either plumb or true. Either way. It's the same principle as the string on the brass weight. It's just a little easier to use, but it's the same principle. So, back in Numbers, God spoke to Aaron. He said, when you light the lamps, remember there were 7 lamps in the tabernacle too. He said, when you light the 7 lamps, whenever you hear about 7 lamps, let your ears kind of perk up a little bit, and think, let's talk about me. When you light them, I love that. When you light them, that means they need to be lit. They don't light themselves. Years back, gosh, it had to be almost 30, 40 years, a brother, not with us anymore, but he wrote a song, and the song was, "O Lord, light my candle." After I heard that song, I remember I went back and looked up everything about candles and lighting them that was in the Word. He said, "O Lord, light my candle. Let your light burn out all the darkness in my soul." And he said, "Light my candle and let it burn forever in my heart." As I read these, I was reminded of that, and I thought about it. Things God has been speaking for years to the church. But he says, when you light the lamps, the 7 lamps will give light over against the candlestick. You light up the Lord. You believe that? You light up His image. You light up His presence in this earth. When you light the lamps and the lamps start to flare up, they shed light on the candlestick that's in the midst of the 7 golden candles. That is such a beautiful parable of what God is looking for in His church. Because remember, God could speak a word and it'd all be over, but He didn't want to do it that way. He wanted man to make a choice. He wanted man to choose Him. Did you want to date a woman that didn't want to be with you? Did you want to marry a woman who didn't love you? You can't force that out of somebody. They have to want it. And that nature is in us because we're made in the image of a God who wouldn't do that to us. He said, if you serve me, it's going to be because you want to. Because you heard what Jesus said when He said, seek and you shall find. Knock, it shall be opened. Ask, it shall be given you. He said that for a reason, because that is what makes it happen in this earth. It's that desire. Through desire, a man, having separated himself, seeketh and intermeddleth with all wisdom. That's what makes that happen. It doesn't just happen in your life. There's a reason why it happens. Psalm 18, verse 12. Psalm 18 is a great victory psalm if you ever want to read something to encourage yourself. In verse 28, he says, "For thou wilt light my candle. The Lord my God will enlighten my darkness." Powerful. Talks about lighting the candle, and he says, "You will light my candle." That's where that brother got that song. It says, "For by thee I have run through a troop. By my God I have leaped over a wall. As for God, His way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust Him. For who is God, saith the Lord, and who is a rock save our God? It is God that girdeth me with strength, and maketh my way perfect." How is your way made perfect in this earth? How do you navigate any highway in the earth? There's signs on the highway, right? You ever see a road with no signs? I haven't. There's always signs. If you're on the highway, you'll see the signs. If you're not, like I say, if you're comfortable where you are, you just know, I don't want any more, you're going to miss all them signs because they're not in your living room, they're on the highway. They're not in your comfort zone. They're out there where God's calling you to go that maybe you think, oh, I really want to do this, but I do. I want to see those signs. And when you do, you get on your journey and things start happening, he says to you, set up waymarks. He says, make high heaps. They used to take stones and they'd make a heap of stones to mark a significant event that had taken place. They would pile up stones, kind of as a memorial. When they went through the Jordan River, dry shod that day, they took stones out of the river and they made a little monument on the bank of the river that they had done that they had walked through it, that God had parted the waters that day. That was just something they did. And it's something in your life. I can think back through my life on the waymarks of God in my life, but I'm not satisfied to rest on that because that won't get me anywhere today. It's good to know what he did. It's good to remind yourself of what he did. It's also good, as God said to Israel, remember, you guys were slaves in the land of Egypt without hope, and I redeemed you. So think about that. While you're thinking about the waymark, think about where you started. And it'll keep you honest before the Lord. And I like this. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet. I've watched videos of mountain goats going straight up a rock wall, and I still can't make any sense of it, but they go right up that rock wall like it's a sidewalk. And you set me on my high places. It's just cool to watch those sheep stand there on a wall. They're standing on a wall looking down like, this is just the most natural thing in the world for me to be up here. And that can be us. That's what David was talking about in this psalm. He says, "Ye teach my hands to war, a bow of steel is broken by mine arms. You have given me the shield of your salvation, and your right hand has holden me up." And I love this. Thy gentleness has made me great. There's some of you in here that might remember a message of that title that we heard years ago. Spoken by a man who at that time seemed to understand that. The gentleness of the Lord. The patience of God. Like I said, he will never force a man to serve him. He can't force a man to love him. He can't force a man to seek him. But when you do, he will be there. Which all leads to Revelation 3, where he addresses the Philadelphia church. Philadelphia. Brotherly love. It says in, what is it? I think it's Hebrews 13 begins with the verse, "Let brotherly love continue." And that was the city that Jesus, in the book of Revelation, chose to illustrate what his church would be like and what he would do for them. He said, "These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, key of David." What is that key? It says, "He that openeth, and no man shutteth, and shutteth, and no man openeth." And there was a time in the Old Testament where God spoke judgment upon the man who was the treasurer in his house, because this man Sheba was living it up, drinking, partying, making merry, just having a good old time, like eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Israel was a mess. They were in such rebellion and sin against God. It was a thing that would call for repentance and fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And there they were in a drunken feast. And he looks down and he says, "You don't understand anything about what you've got under your command." He was the treasurer. That means everything in God's treasure was at his disposal. He had the key. And God said, "You've dishonored." And he said, "I'm going to pull you down. He said, you were a nail fastened in a sure place. I'm going to rip it down. And everything that's attached it to you is going to come down with you. He says, I've got a servant, Eliakim, and I'm going to fasten him as a nail in a sure place. And I'm going to lay the key of David on his shoulder, because he understands the value of the treasure. You see, when we begin to move for God, what do people want to see? They want to see the power of God in this earth. They want to see His Spirit moving in this earth. They want to see the works of Jesus start to operate in the church. That's all in the treasure house of God. It's all there. And people have got their eyes on the treasure. But the treasure, if you're going to take that treasure in your hands, don't be like Sheba and abuse it. Have respect to it. Recognize that if you're going to handle that, John talks about it, about Jesus as Him who our hands have handled. He said, we walked with Him. We put our arms around, we shook hands with Him, we touched Him. And he was beginning to realize, I think John was beginning to realize that we didn't understand what our hands were handling and what we had touched in that time. We didn't even have the slightest idea. But what God was saying there about the key of David, He said, I'm going to take this man, Eliakim, and I'm going to give him the key of David, and he will open and no man will shut, and he will shut and no man will open, and I trust him with my treasure. Can he trust you with his treasure? And the treasure is the Spirit of God and the gifts of the Spirit that are going to operate in these days ahead like they have never operated before in His church, because He has a people like He's never had before. And He's speaking to them in ways that He have never been able to speak before, because they wouldn't hear it. But they're hearing it now. And when you understand the weight of the key of David being laid on your shoulder, He says, I'll lay the key of David on his shoulder. Why? Because he can stand strong for the Lord. Remember, it said about those two witnesses, they stand for the Lord. In this whole earth, they're the ones that will stand for Him. They have that key of David on their shoulder. They understand the weight of it. They understand the value of what God is going to unleash through them. They understand what it means to take their hands and go and lay them on somebody and say, out in the name of Jesus, to cast the spirit out of somebody, to speak healing. They understand how powerful that thing is, and they don't want to abuse that. They don't want to take it lightly, but they certainly don't want to abuse it. And God's gifts have been abused in this earth. And there's no doubt about it that they've been abused by men who abused them and didn't live a life that was lived in accordance with what God had given them. And He is not looking for that in this day and time. He's looking for something different. And He's going to have it. That's the beauty of it. He's going to have it. So here's what He says. He says, I have the key of David. He's saying this to the Philadelphia church. I open, no man shuts and shuts. I know your works. Now this is really significant, because it changed my focus when I read this and I understood what He was saying to them. He said, I have set before you an open door, and no man can shut it. He said, I've taken the limits off of what you can do. Why? Why was He willing to do that for them? Look at what He says. He says, does He say, because you guys are so cool, you guys are so powerful, you guys are turning this world upside down right now? He said, you have a little strength. You've kept my word, and you haven't denied my name. He has showed thee, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of thee but to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God. And here He's addressing the church that did that. He said, you have a little strength. A little strength. You're humble. You're insignificant in this world. They don't even know who you are. But you've kept my word. and you haven't denied my name. You've done justice, and you've walked humbly before me, and I've seen it. Behold, he said, now listen to this, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I've loved you. After the slaughter of the kings, in Genesis there, Abraham, when he went out and fought those kings, and the ones that had taken his nephew and all the families and everything, he went out by night, overtook them, and it says they put their feet on the necks of those kings. And then that happened again when Joshua was over Israel. And he even commanded the men of God to come and put their feet on the necks of those kings that they had just conquered. There's a significance to that, and he's talking about it here. The ones that mock you, the ones that have no regard for you. It says in another place in the Word, it says the day will come when those kings will have to consider you, and they'll have to think about you, and they'll have to reckon with you. And that day is coming. It's promised in God's Word. And he's telling the Philadelphia church here, because you have kept the word of my patience. What a powerful thing that is. To dwell in insignificance, serving God with all your heart, eyes fixed on the things of his word, beginning to understand what he's getting ready to do in this earth, and seeing it in a different way, and knowing this is normal Christian life. This is what he wants from his church. This is what he's calling us to. And just beginning to behold that, and living in a way that the rest of the world doesn't even know what you're seeing or what you're hearing, but you have respect to God, to his timing, to his wisdom, and you have that patience. You're keeping the word of his patience. And you say, Lord, when you're ready, I'm here. When the time is right, I'm here. I'm preparing myself. I'm guarding my heart. I'm walking humbly in this earth. I am seeking you with everything I've got, because I want to be ready when you're ready to move. Bingo. He says, because you've kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which will come upon all the world to try them that dwell on the earth. So that's a promise of protection for us. So there's a lot of details about these days ahead, and they're in the Word, and God is going to reveal them when the time is right to reveal them, so we'll know what's coming. But in the meantime, I'm going to stick to what he says here. I'm going to keep the word of his patience. I'm going to read what he says that we're supposed to do. I'm going to make that me. It ain't someone else. It wasn't 2,000 years ago. It's me. It's going to be me. And that's the faith that he's looking for in his church. To keep the word of his patience. To not despise the day of small things. Don't despise the plumb line. If you're trying to use a plumb line, one thing you got to be careful is that whatever the wall you're setting, you don't want to get it too close, or you'll bump the line. And you bump the line, then you got to wait till it settles down again. So you don't just kind of rush over to it. You treat it with a lot of respect. Even though the wall you're raising may be 12 feet tall and it may be 50 feet, it may be you may have a crane lifting that wall. But you got to be so gentle and so careful that you don't bump that line, because that line's true. Truth is that way. If you bump it, then it's not true anymore. Men have been bumping God's word for years. Bump it a little here, bump it a little there. They don't care. That's good enough. And it's not. And God is getting to the point where he says, I want the church that I died for. I want the church Jesus paid for, and I'm going to have it. And he's describing it here to the Philadelphia church. He's saying, you folks get it. Do we get it? Do you folks get it? You see, one thing that God spoke to me, he said, you got to find the people that get you. He said, not everybody will. Some will think you're downright weird sometimes, but it doesn't bother me. Jesus was a carpenter's son for 30 years. You didn't hear anything. There's nothing written about that time, but you can see it if you look. You kind of got to read between the lines a bit, but you can see what was going on during that time in his life and what he was beginning to understand. And there's clues. Like in Hebrews 10, where he talks about what was written of him in the volume of the book. Well, what's he talking about? He was reading that. He was reading it, and he was seeing himself. And he was, that aha moment. It's like getting in the bathtub and the water goes, I understand, I see how it works. And he knew who he was. He started to see it. And that's what he wants us to start to understand, who we are. He says, I come quickly, hold that fast which you have, that no man take your crown. Here's the part I really like. And it's repeated 7 times, of course, different promises each time, but to him that overcometh. That's a promise that's 2,000 years old. Okay? It's been there all along for the church, to anyone that would overcome. It's not reserved for a particular time frame or whatever. It's just there for the church, to him that overcometh. Because he was always expecting to have an overcoming church. It says, to him that overcometh, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. I've read that. You think, yeah, you'll be outstanding, everybody. But pillar. A pillar we have, right? There's some right there, you can see them. Every time I stand up here, I tend to see it. I don't focus on them because I'm preaching to you, not the pillars. But I know they're there, and that second floor would not be there if they weren't there. It would come down. Now, so a pillar is a structural member, and it's a visible foundation. The one I'm standing on, you can't see. I can't see it. But I know it's there, or this building wouldn't be here. It's not visible. It's not apparent to the eye. But people who drive by here must wonder, well, I wonder what holds all that up. Well, I could tell you some of it. I remember a building like this that my dad built years ago in Canton, Ohio, and I was just in high school, and I watched how the thing was held together and what they did to keep the arches from spreading out and all that. It was just fascinating. But when it's all said and done, no one even knows it's there. And that's us, keeping the word of his patience. The foundation of the church, it's built on what? The apostles and the prophets. Who were they? They were those crazy people that kept saying, there's got to be more, there's got to be more, there's got to be more. They were those crazy people that kept saying, Lord, what? Lord, where? Lord, when? And kept asking and kept knocking and kept seeking and would not stop. Like that woman that kept going to that judge. He says, she's going to wear me out. At some point, I've got to give because she's never going to leave me alone till she gets what she wants. Are you that kind of person? Are you that way with the Lord? He was telling us something there. Annoy me to the point where I've got to give you what you're asking me for. Don't let me rest. It says, give him no rest. Well, the only way you can not give God rest is that you first have to give him rest and let him dwell in you. And then when he gets familiar with you and you keep coming back to him and you say, God, you live in me. God, you dwell here. I am not going to be quiet. I'm going to be the noisiest, squeakiest wheel in your whole house until you do the thing that you said you would do, until you fulfill the promise that you said would happen to the one that would obey your word. I'm going to stick to that. I'm not going to let go until I see it happen. And that's what makes a pillar stand up. Suddenly the foundation is visible. All those years of being quiet, all those years of being hidden away where no one could see you, suddenly, look at them. You're never in this place where you can't see the structure of it that's come up from that foundation. And he's saying, if you overcome, if you will live this life, if you will believe what the Word says about you, if you can keep the word of my patience, You're going to have that David day where all of a sudden you're taking 5 smooth stones out of the brook because you're about to slay a giant and nobody even knew who you were. That day comes and all of a sudden everybody, oh, look at him. Where'd he come from? Where's he been all these years? And it's suddenly you're visible. You're out in the open. And God wants it that way. But that doesn't come automatically. And that's what he's saying. Keep the word of my patience. He says, I will make you a pillar. You can't make yourself a pillar, but you can do everything you need to do so he can make you a pillar. And that is God. That is his word. That is the hunger, the longing that never quits. And that's what he's going to have. That's what he's calling us to. And he says, he shall go no more out. And I thank God that those pillars have no intention of leaving the building. Now, another thing, once you got a pillar holding up a second floor, what's that say about the church? The church just went to a new level. Higher. What did Jesus keep telling his disciples? Come up higher. Where did he go to teach them? He went up into the mountains. He was always trying to get this image to them that there is a higher place in God to go if you want to pay the price. There is a price. You've got to be willing to go down that rabbit hole or into that wilderness, whatever it is. He's calling you there. And if you're willing to do it, yeah, it will be uncomfortable at first. But what Israel of old found out was that a couple weeks' journey took them 40 years because of the hardness of their heart and the stubbornness and the unbelief. That's what killed them. Disobedience and unbelief. They perished in their wilderness. And God had to wait 40 years till they were all dead before he would take the next generation, and move them into the promised land. It didn't have to be. That's who they were, who they chose to be. So when you look at the church today, it ain't God holding back. It's not. He's waiting for us. It's always that way. God's waiting. We're not, people say, oh, we're tarrying, we're waiting on the Lord. We're waiting. Well, he's waiting on you. And there's a patience involved, but there's a press involved. What did Paul say near the end of his life? In prison. He said, I still don't count myself to have apprehended all this. I still don't understand all that's going on here, but I do see something. This one thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to put everything else behind me. And I'm going to press for the mark of the prize of the high calling in God with everything in me till my last breath. And I'm never going to stop doing that because that is who I am. That's the man he became on the road to Damascus. And after all the years, after all those letters went out to all those churches, that's what he had to say. It's never going to stop. I still haven't. If you ever think you've arrived, you better check your ticket and look at your destination and kind of review the journey and see where you really are headed, because we've never arrived. This journey keeps going as long as we're willing to keep taking it. That's the beauty of serving God. It never gets boring, and it never has an end point until Jesus comes back. So, the seeing eye, the hearing ear, the Lord hath made them both. That song we used to sing, I think you know it, Mike. Could you open my eyes that I may hear, that I may see, open my ears that I may hear. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Those are powerful words. And I know that a lot of us could feel that when we would sing that, but to understand that and see what God is calling His church to, where He's trying to take us now, that's what He's looking for. He's looking for people who are willing to go there. Thank you, Lord. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. Thy word is sweet unto my taste. It's sweeter than the honey and the honeycomb. Open my eyes that I may see. Open my ears that I may hear. See the glory of the Lord and hear the mysteries of your word. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, give to me an understanding heart, so that I may learn. Lord, give to me thy great wisdom. Lord, teach me to discern. Thank you, Lord. And open my eyes that I may see. Open my ears that I may hear. See the glory of the Lord. Hear the mysteries of your word. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy on me. Oh, I feel His presence in this room. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. That's God's Spirit wanting to take you to a higher level. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for your Spirit, Lord. Have you felt a languishing in your Christian life? If you feel like it's been kind of stagnant lately, shake that off. Say, no, devil. I'm Philadelphia people. We understand the word of His patience. We understand it. We believe it. We can hold on to what we see in His word because we know He will not let us down. We know He's called us to something. We know we've got to hang on, and the time is right. That day is going to come when all of a sudden we're brought straight out of obscurity, and this world is going to have to reckon with us. You know, you think about all the times that happens in God's Word. You know, and there in the book of Revelation, you have those two witnesses again, those two anointed ones that were filling the bowl with the oil. There comes a time when the world will think they've gotten rid of them, that witness. Those ones that stood up for God. They'll think, hey, they're gone now. We can have a good time. We can live it up. And little do they know, the day comes when out of nowhere, there they are, and great fear fell on them that saw them. There are themes like that in God's Word that repeat over and over and over. That's just one of them. But I love it because it's speaking to us right now, right where we are. It's telling us that what we've been doing for these years is about to pay off, and it's telling us, don't let go now. I remember same brother that wrote that song about lighting my candle. He wrote another one. He said, Lord, don't let us stumble this late in the race. That was 40 years ago. It wasn't really that late yet then, but I think about it now. I don't want this patience and this perseverance, and God doesn't want it wasted. And I won't waste it. I am never going to sit there and demean myself or belittle myself or anyone in the body of Christ because something isn't happening in their life at that moment in that time. I'm just going to pray for God to give me the eyes to see what He sees in them. And this can be people in your church. This can be people you meet on the street where you can let God, oh, it's so wonderful. You walk this earth and it's like you're hearing bells. You're hearing a sound. You're hearing music. And you know you're hearing it because you're not just walking this earth like a beat down kind of a weak person. You're walking it with a spring in your step, and there's kind of a dance in your feet. You are dancing to the music you're hearing. He's the Lord of the dance. Oh, I thank you, Lord. And He's given us the ability to move through His Spirit and dance to them. Can you dance to what you're hearing? If you can't, then you need to hear something you can dance to. I remember that there were even movies about this where people would say that, I can't dance to that kind of music. Give me something I can dance to. They would say that about certain kinds of music. And I have to say that what I saw for years in the church, I couldn't dance to it. I couldn't move to it. I didn't feel a part of it. There was no rhythm to it that corresponded with what God was trying to do in my life. But I'll tell you something, I can dance to this stuff. I can dance to what God's showing me now. What did David do when he finally saw the ark coming back into Jerusalem? Boy, he cut loose. He cut a rug there on the streets, and they thought he'd gone stark crazy. But he was just rejoicing in the Lord. And it says he didn't just dance a little. It says he danced with all his might. He was still a young man, and he was just leaping. I can't imagine. If they had a high jump bar, he probably would have gone right over it. So don't waste it. Understand what God is building in your life. Those quiet times with the Lord, that those times when it's just you and Him, and you're searching and you're telling God, search me, O Lord. Know my heart. Try me. Know my thoughts. See if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way of life. Another song. Another song we use. I'm telling you, God's going to bring those songs back to us, because when we start moving into that and start walking in that, we're going to want to sing that, and we're going to want to dance to that music. I just thank God. Can you hear the music? Can you hear the music? Can you tune? You know, there's that old song that they used to sing called Turn Your Radio On. Because we're wired that way. We're built that way. We're built to hear something, to see something. And He's looking. Can you open your spiritual eyes, your spiritual, can you hear the sounds that He's making in the earth? Oh, I just thank God for that sound. And I thank God at age 68 that I still got feet that could dance and could hear the music and could walk with a spring in my step. And it doesn't embarrass me in the least bit, because God put the spring there. God put the life there. God gives the word. Great was the company of them that heard it, that published it. Yes, we know where it came from. We know who gave us the word. Hallelujah. Yes, Lord. Let's just pray. Father, I just ask you today, on your people, Lord, in this room. There's every generation here right now, Lord. There's very young. There's some middle-aged. There's young people. There's some that are older. Move on your people, Lord. As we sang in that song, open their eyes. The hearing ear, the seeing eye, Lord, you made them both. Open them up, Lord. Open them up. Open them up, Lord. And put a spring in their step. Take them to a higher level, Lord. That's what you want to do. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. I think we'll close there. Praise the Lord.